Daniel Mercer arrived at the Neurological Imaging Center in his best blazer, the one that still smelled faintly of cedar chips from the attic wardrobe. Officially, he was 67, medically retired after 3 decades in military intelligence, but he still thought of himself as Colonel. And he liked to move through civilian corridors with the crispness of parade ground days. 3 months earlier, a polite graduate student had called, explaining a federally funded project on memory consolidation in aging veterans. "We're studying post-retirement cognitive resilience," she'd said, and he'd taken it as both flattery and a chance to be useful again. His wife had died last winter. His grown children phoned on alternate weekends. The quiet in the house was intolerable. So he signed the consent forms, traded his clothes for a gray hospital smock, and followed the technicians into a room that smelled of ozone and lemon disinfectant. The apparatus looked like a cross between an MRI tunnel and an aviator's helmet. Fiber optic cables sprouted from the crown. An array of screens projected murmuring green code. "It'll feel like a lucid dream," the lead researcher, Dr. Lay, assured him. "You'll experience vivid episodic memories, but you'll be able to comment in real time. If anything seems uncomfortable, just say the word abort. That's our safety phrase." Mercer raised an eyebrow. In his old unit, abort had meant immediate extraction. He wondered whether young scientists understood how sacred such a word could become to a field operative. Still, he agreed, lay back and let the gel-coated sensors chill his temples. When the hum started, so did the colors. First a dazzling white, then an implosion of charcoal gray. A heartbeat later, he was no longer in the lab. He was sitting, wrists bound, in a metal chair bolted to a concrete floor. The stripped bulb overhead swung, casting blades of light across sweat-stained walls. Opposite him stood Farid Jassim, the Algerian insurgent Daniel had questioned in '93. Only, back then Farid had been the man in the chair, and Mercer the silhouette standing above him. Now their positions were reversed. The prisoner who had refused to name his safe houses had become the interrogator, impeccably dressed in a Western suit. Farid leaned close. "Colonel Mercer," he said calmly, placing a recorder on the table. "Tell me about the orchard." His English had a metrically precise cadence, like poetry recited by heart. "I don't know any orchard," Mercer replied, mind racing. There had never been a mission file labeled that way. "We have time," Farid said, and smiled. Mercer felt the old instincts flare. Measure the room, test the restraints, stall for rapport. But when he tried to crane his neck, a spike of pain radiated from the electrodes he could feel, yes, physically feel, taped behind his ears. Impossible, he told himself. This is an illusion, a neural echo. Still, the ache was real enough. Farid began with questions Mercer once used on others: family names, childhood pets, the taste of the first food after capture. Mercer parried, refusing small admissions. But after each deflection, the room's temperature seemed to rise. His shirt stuck to his back, water pooled at the base of his spine. Farid never shouted, never threatened. The control was subtler. Occasional sips from a cup of cold tea placed just out of Mercer's reach. A whisper of fresh air every time the metal door opened and closed again. After what felt like hours, Mercer managed abort. The word echoed off the ceiling, was swallowed by the bare walls, and died. Farid paused only a beat, then continued. "How many orchards does a patriot burn before he understands he is the fire?" The line was pure rhetorical flourish, but the tone was deadly earnest. Mercer shouted, "Abort," twice more. Nothing changed. Farid slid a manila photograph across the table. Blackened trees, bodies under canvas tarps, women wailing. Mercer had never seen the picture. His memory held nothing like it. Yet his stomach rolled with a strange gravitational horror, as if another deeper mind recognized the scene. Abruptly, the bulb flickered out. Darkness swallowed everything. When light returned, the setting had changed. Now he sat in a bamboo chair under a swaying ceiling fan that groaned like a distant helicopter. Mold speckled the walls. The new interrogator was Maria Vela, the Peruvian dissident captured in '97 after the Lima embassy bombing. She wore combat fatigues, her once shorn hair grown long and braided. "Mi coronel," she said, voice thick with disapproval. "You withstood Farid. Let us see how you fare now." She touched her tablet. A generator roared. The ceiling fan stopped. Frozen air turned sauna thick. Beads of condensation gathered on Mercer's upper lip. "The orchard," she repeated in Spanish. "Speak." He tried to orient. What could an Algerian insurgent and a Peruvian Marxist possibly share? During his career, he'd questioned arms smugglers, rogue scientists, corrupt diplomats. No operation had ever borne the codename Orchard. He licked dry lips. "I swear I don't know what you're talking about." Maria's tactic was auditory assault. Children's voices chanting multiplication tables, spliced with weeping, pumped through wall speakers. Because the sound lacked overt threat, it evaded Geneva definitions of torture, something Mercer himself had once argued in a white paper. Now, trapped by the same loophole, he felt panic slip between his ribs like an ice pick. He clawed at his restraints, desperate to invoke the safe word again. The room swallowed abort as efficiently as the last. The chanting sped up, weeping grew sharper, and somewhere a child coughed until the speakers crackled with fluid. Maria watched him with scientific detachment. His own expression mirrored back. He felt time sliding, coiling in on itself. When the fan scraped to life again, she was gone. The bamboo chair remained. But now the floor was wet tar, and overhead roared fluorescent lights stark enough to bleach color from skin. A security camera rotated, motor whimpering. Konstantin Volkov, a Russian cyber operative from Mercer's final posting, walked in wearing latex gloves and the expression of a dentist about to numb gums. "Zdravstvuyte, Colonel," he said. "Your subconscious is a fascinating archive." He held a syringe filled with clear fluid. "We use what you taught us, progressive fear titration." He tapped the needle. "Sodium selenite, harmless in microdoses. It simply magnifies memory." "What memory?" Mercer rasped. "I wasn't at any orchard." "That," Volkov replied, "is the thrill of discovery." He injected the drug into Mercer's forearm. There was no sting, but an expanding bloom of heat traveled up the vein, pricking at nerve endings. Visions erupted. A satellite map, coordinates flicking, drone footage of a valley oasis ringed by pomegranate trees, command deck chatter. "Target is 4 clicks south, no civilian heat signatures." A younger Mercer signed off. "Confirmed." A missile streaked. The feed flashed bright, then became smoke. When the vision dissolved, Volkov had vanished. Mercer's restraints were gone, yet he could not stand. His legs tingled uselessly. The walls around him folded inward like cardboard soaked in rain, then sprang outward into a cavernous hangar. Metal catwalks clanged overhead. Rows of military caskets, flag-draped yet nameless, filled the space. One opened. Inside lay Mercer's own body, eyes taped shut the way battlefield morticians prevent drying. He spun, retching. A new figure approached. Dr. Lay, the researcher who had strapped him into the machine hours, years ago. She wore her lab coat, but her voice carried the cadence of an uncharged indictment. "Tell us about the Orchard, Colonel. You authorized Operation Orchard on March 14, 2003, EO 200 Zulu." She slid a declassified memo across an invisible table. Her pen tapped the signature line where his name appeared crisp and blue. "Targets. Suspected chemical stockpiles," she recited. "Collateral estimates, minimal. Actual outcome, 97 dead, 42 of them children hiding under fruit crates. All intel erroneous." Mercer swallowed. The memo looked real. Digital timestamp intact, clearance bar across the header. Yet he had no recollection of authorizing that strike. He'd commanded teams, yes, but never remote strikes. He specialized in extraction-level interrogation, not drone warfare. "This is fabricated," he whispered. The hangar echoed, convicting him with his own breath. He shut his eyes. If the environment obeyed neural commands, maybe he could will himself back to the clinic. Instead, images flooded faster. Orchard limbs snapping under concussion blasts. Children's shirts pinned to dry bark. Insurgent propaganda leaflets quoting UN statutes. Each vision arrived with sensory fidelity. Smell of scorched sap, metallic tang of blood-wet soil, ember-hot wind. The loop no longer waited for interrogators. Now the orchard itself questioned him, every tree a witness swaying under the weight of memory. Instinct said, "Compartmentalize." He built mental walls the way spies slid envelopes without breaking wax seals. He recited names of his grandchildren, Ellie, Marcus, June. He pictured their freckles, their lopsided marzipan birthday cakes. For a flicker, warm sunlight replaced the hangar's fluorescent blaze. But then a pomegranate burst like a grenade, splattering seeds that morphed into shrapnel letters spelling "orchard" across the ceiling. Sunlight failed. Faces of every captive he'd broken resurfaced, not in torture chambers, but at their moments of surrender. Farid handing over a notebook, Maria slumping after 26 hours chained to a pipe, Volkov sobbing when confronted with forged proofs of his wife's infidelity. These were successes in the agency ledger, yet each face now bore the orchard's ash upon the cheek, as if linked to that single incandescent wrong. He tried again. "Abort!" He screamed until his throat skinned raw. Silence gulped the word like thick water. For the first time in his seasoned life, Daniel Mercer felt certitude that he would die, unnamed, within a hallucination. Then a bell rang. Soft, homey, like the grandfather clock in his foyer. He was seated at a kitchen table in twilight. Loaves of bread cooled on wire racks. A dog snored near the fridge. Across the table sat Ellen, his late wife, wearing the floral apron she'd favored during Sunday roasts. Her death had been quick, aneurysm during a pottery class, but here she smiled with the mild concern of a spouse facing a spouse's nightmare. "Danny," she said, using the diminutive he'd never allow on base. "They want you to apologize." "For something I didn't do," he pleaded. "You ordered men who ordered other men who ordered machines." She poured tea steaming with cardamom. "So maybe you never held the match, but you packed the kindling." He looked at his hands, calloused, aging, joints swollen from years of pen pushing and door kicking. He'd taught field manuals citing psychological disintegration as a byproduct, never the objective. Yet he had also told recruits, truth is whatever ends questioning. That doctrine had served national security, or so the briefing rooms claimed. Now he saw its boomerang angle. Truth could be extracted from the extractor. "Ellen," he whispered, "tell me how to end this." "Confess," she said softly. "Mean it." A tremor ran through the kitchen, peeling wallpaper back to concrete, revealing Farid, Maria, Volkov, arrayed behind her like a tribunal. Ellen faded, leaving only her scent of lavender and powdered sugar. The concrete floor cracked into orchard soil. Red fruit lay in broken heaps, juice glistening under moonlight. The tribunal waited. Wind carried children's laughter, then coughing, then silence. Mercer's voice broke as words formed, clumsy, stuttering, but undeniable. I authorized operations built on incomplete verifications. I prioritized efficiency over certainty. I knew wrong coordinates were possible. I proceeded anyway. His throat constricted. If an orchard burned, if children died, that is my crime. I was its architect, whether by pen or silence, I confess. The ground absorbed the statement like rain on dust. Branches whispered. Farid stepped forward, hand extended as though to shake. Maria nodded once. Volkov clicked his heels. The orchard dimmed, lanterns flaring out one by one until only starlight remained. Mercer felt the restraints evaporate, replaced by a weightless exhale. He mouthed abort, no longer as plea, but as acceptance, and darkness answered. He awoke choking on lab air. Cold pads peeled from his temples. Dr. Lay loomed above, face bloodless. "We lost you for 4 minutes," she said, voice trembling. "The biometric alarms. Then you started talking. You kept repeating a date and coordinates. I recorded everything." Mercer's body ached as if he'd run miles on broken glass. He pushed himself upright, noticed leather straps at his wrists, extra restraints the team must have added when he thrashed. Lights flickered. The climate control hissed. "How long was I under?" he croaked. 9 hours, Lay replied. She glanced toward a one-way mirror. Behind it, shadows moved. Agency men, he recognized, though no insignia marked them. One opened the door. "Colonel Mercer," the man announced, "you are to accompany us for debriefing under National Security Directive." Dr. Lay protested. "He's a civilian volunteer. The IRB. Classified jurisdiction." The agent produced forms Mercer himself had helped design. Post-operational renditions disguised as medical transfers. He felt the recursive trap fall into place. He had given these tools to the system. Now the system applied them to him. Mercer stood, wobbling. He imagined refusing, but the orchard still rustled in peripheral vision, thickets of culpability. Perhaps official confession would finish what the hallucination began. Or perhaps the loop had never truly ended. He followed the men out, the corridor echoing. As the door shut, he heard Farid's voice inside his skull, equal parts threat and benediction. The fire remembers its spark. The fluorescent lights receded one by one behind him, like lanterns extinguished in an endless orchard night.